investors looking at, other asset classes because of where things are at with multifamily. But I also think that it's really important that if that is the asset class that you're focused on, that you're explaining to them why it's so important to wait, right? Good things are worth waiting for, because as this market continues to progress, there's going to be some really amazing buying opportunities in third and fourth quarter.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for another great session today. We meet every Thursday at 10 a.m. and everybody's welcome to join. So today we're going to be talking about raising capital, and we have a very special guest with us, Keely Hubbard. She's a passionate sales coach with a track record of over 800 million in revenue and 17 years of experience in sales and executive leadership. She works with business owners and corporations across multiple industries and especially enjoys coaching clients in the syndication space on how to raise capital on repeat and build a raving fan investor community. Keely is also managing partner of Texas Legacy Wines, a 1,200-acre vineyard development and operations in the great state of Texas. And today we'll talk about how to turn strangers into repeat investors and raving fans. Welcome, Keely. I'm super excited to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
All right, before we get started, I'm gonna share a small little disclaimer. So this session is strictly for knowledge sharing purposes and should not be considered a legal, accounting, or investment advice. If you have any questions related to capital raising or any financial advice you need or any tax situations you have, please consult your CPAs or your tax advisors. Again, this is a knowledge sharing session only. And Keely, stage is all yours.
Well, thank you, Vinky. It's great to see y'all here. Hey, Sean, I see you're in DFW. I'm in Fort Worth. So I'm not sure where you're at in the Metroplex, but it's good to see some Texans in here. So thank you for having me, Vinky. I'm not a big, oh, you're in Denton. Okay, that's not too far. Awesome. I'm not a big slide person. I mean, I could certainly put together a slideshow for y'all, but what I've noticed from doing trainings and speaking engagements is that I find they're the most productive and people get the most value out of them from questions and Q&A and interaction. And so I don't want to spend the next, however long we have talking at you. I would much rather it be more interactive. So if y'all can do me a favor, if you're up for it, if you're up for some interaction, let me know in the chat how many of you are currently raising capital, or let me know if you're just getting started. Let me know in the chat. Where are you at in your process of starting your syndication business?
So let me change to the gallery view so we can talk to everybody, right?
Perfect. Getting started. Love that, Isha. And then Devin, I know you said you were getting started too. Love it. Looking for JVs. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I'll give you just a brief background on how I got into syndication. I was in corporate, built a big career there, ran sales teams of about 600 people, got tired of building somebody else's empire. I know probably a lot of you in here have felt like that at some point in your life. So I quit at the peak of my career. People thought I was crazy, but my passion's always been teaching sales. And, the more you climb the corporate ladder, the more you get into meetings about data and analytics and things that don't really move the needle, in my personal opinion, when it comes to sales. And I wanted to be with my teams and I wanted to be coaching them. And so I left, started my own consulting firm for sales coaching, which is really what I'm super passionate about. And my father at the time was like, hey, I'm getting out of the financial markets. He's a professional trader, hedge fund manager. He's like, let's get into real estate. So that's how I got into the syndication space. And what I found when I got into this space and people knew that I was a sales coach is that there's so many people that get into this industry that are excited about syndication, excited about, private money investments, because they're really good. They're great at analytics. They're great at numbers, underwriting, the whole tech side of the business. Let me know in the chat if you're an analytical person. Just give me a yes. If you love the numbers, you love the spreadsheets, is that why you got interested in the business? Give me a yes in the chat. I want to know if I've got some analytical people in here. Or no, if you don't, if you hate the spreadsheets, let me know that too. Okay, Sean said yes. Love it. That's often what I see is people are attracted to this business because they love underwriting. They love the excitement of searching for a deal. But what a lot of people realize when you're acquiring large assets, what most people don't expect is that they have to actually talk to people and raise capital and sell themselves and sell their business and sell, their asset class. And so that oftentimes will get in the way of people really becoming successful in this business is because people hate sales. Is that a fair statement? Most people don't like salespeople. Have you ever had a bad sales experience with somebody? Let me know in the chat. If you can think of one, just give me a yes in the chat. If you've had a bad sales experience. We all have at some point. I personally don't like salespeople, and I've been in sales for 17 years. But what are all the reasons we don't like salespeople? Because this is the key thing that holds people back from raising capital is they're terrified they're going to come across like the typical salesperson. And for the most part, we don't like salespeople. So write in the chat. This is the fun part. We get to beat up on salespeople for a little bit. What do we not like about salespeople? How do they act? What do they do? What do they say? Why do we hate salespeople? Let me know in the chat, or unmute yourself if you want to chat. I'm fine with that. If you're okay with it, Vinky, if they want to just blurt it out.
Yeah. I think
pushy.
Well, that could be dangerous, letting me unmute. So the big thing, like Nancy said in the chat, they're pushy, and they always ask, questions that can only be answered by yes, because they're trying to drive you down that yes path and trap you in an inescapable logic trap.
Yep. It's so true, because some sales trainer at some point in their career told them that you need to get people to say yes as many times as possible in the conversation. And magically that somehow ends up in a yes when it's time for them to swipe a credit card or buy something from you. In our case, it's, wire funds. And the problem is these salespeople, thank you for that, Sean, for your feedback. Salespeople have been doing this for so long, bad behaving salespeople, that it has really turned consumers they're constantly in defense mode, right? You walk into Nordstrom and a salesperson says, hi, Nancy, how are you? Or hi, you should know your name, right? But hi, how are you today? Can I help you find something? And what's everybody's universal response? No matter what store you go into, Best Buy, you go to Costco, right? It's always, no, thanks, I'm just looking, right? Like we all came up with the same answer ourselves, but it's because we're trying to push off salespeople. We're terrified of being sold. We're terrified of all the pushy, aggressive sales behavior. What Sean mentioned, I refer to as setup questions, where you feel like they're trying to get you to say yes, and people start resisting that. So all of these sales strategies and techniques that we don't like, that, for some of us have been maybe ingrained in us because of experiences we've had, maybe bad sales trainings that you've had. We have to do the exact opposite if we want to be successful in any sales role. And, if you don't know this already, maybe this will be a big surprise, but raising capital is very much a sales role. We are 100% in sales. It's commission only too. If you don't raise capital, your family doesn't eat. That's how the real estate business works. But what I will tell you is if you can learn to raise capital successfully, you can learn to sell. If you can develop that skill set, you will never be without income. You will never be without a job. Any door can open for you if you have sales skills, because it is such a unique skill set that so many businesses need. So we've got to start doing the exact opposite of sales people if we want to be successful. So I'm going to teach you a couple strategies. I jotted down some notes that I think would be helpful that you can apply in your business today, or if you're just getting started and you're thinking about raising capital and talking to investors. And one of the biggest ones, I actually taught this a few days ago, is how we introduce ourselves and what we tell people what it is that we do, right? So we know we have to go to networking events. How many of you love networking? Let me know in the chat. Do you love it or hate it? Just type in love or hate. I personally don't like networking. I'm just being honest with y'all. Oh, good. Rashab, you love it. That's awesome. Love it. Okay, that's great that y'all love it. That's awesome. Y'all probably think I'm nuts. I mean, I've been very successful in sales, but I'm actually more of an introvert. I'm like an introverted extrovert. It's a weird combo. But big rooms of like hundreds of people, I'm not the one that walks around and like works the room and breaks into big groups and circles and, introduces myself. I'm much better one-on-one. So, but we have to network, right? We got to meet people. If y'all can remember this phrase, conversations equal capital. Our job in our syndication business, if we really want to raise capital, we have to generate new conversations. That's the leading indicator to a full pipeline of investor capital. Same thing if you are sourcing deals, maybe you're in an acquisition role. Your leading indicator is LOIs. How many LOIs have you submitted? That's going to be the leading indicator for, are you going to have a deal that actually comes through? Well, in raising capital, it's new conversations. How many new people am I meeting? How many relationships am I building? The conversations you have today will be the capital that you need 4 to 5 months from now. So we've got to make sure we're meeting new people. And one of the mistakes that I see people make is they don't know how to introduce themselves. So let's say you're in a conversation with somebody one-on-one, and my first tip is get the other person to talk. Don't tell them what you do. Ask them a ton of questions. What brought them to the event? Who are they trying to meet? What do they do? And another tip is to get outside of the real estate space. If you really want to raise capital, you need to be the only real estate expert in the room. If you can get into rooms of people with your ideal investor and you're the only person that does self-storage or multifamily or senior assisted living, whatever it is you're raising capital for, that's really going to be a great place to find your investors. So get into those rooms where you're the only real estate expert. When you are talking to people, how we introduce ourselves is crucial. But first, what Sean said in the chat is what brought him here today? Like, hey, I'm just curious, like, is this your first time at this event? What brought you here? Who are you trying to meet? What do you do? Especially if you talk to business owners or somebody that's really passionate about their career, find out how they get into it, how long they've been doing it, what gets them excited about it, what's their long-term vision, right, for their business or for their career, their goals. Have you all ever met somebody at a party or a networking event and they walk off and you're like, man, I really like that guy. I really like that woman, but you don't know a dang thing about him. Like you don't know anything about him. You just know that you really like that person. Why do you like him so much? You don't know anything about him, but what makes you really like that person? Any ideas? And y'all can unmute yourself and blurt it out or type it in the chat. Yep. They let you talk about your favorite subject, which is you. So if you really want to get people to like you and to start building rapport, it's asking a ton of questions. And the law of reciprocity will cause them to in turn say, well, hey, Vinky, I'm curious, what do you do? And that's your moment to shine. Okay. So here's a couple things. We'll talk about the don'ts first, and then we'll talk about the do's. The first thing we don't want to do is we don't want to say, I'm a multifamily syndicator. Why not? Why is that problematic? What's wrong with that phrase? It's the truth, right? If that's what you are, or I'm a self-storage syndicator. Why do we not want to use even the word multifamily? What's wrong with those words if that's how we introduce ourselves? Yeah, they don't know what it is. I was in a conversation with somebody at an event, and they were talking about how somebody thought multifamily was a charitable organization. They don't know that multifamily equates to apartments. So it's industry jargon. Syndicator, nobody knows what that is. So people are going to say, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then the conversation stops there because they don't want to feel stupid because they don't know what it is. And they don't want to insult you because they're supposed to know what it is. So we want to cut that out. Yet it doesn't help them solve their problem. Exactly. So we don't want to say multifamily syndicator, stay away from all the jargon. The second thing we want to avoid is we don't want to start throwing stats out there. Now it's a lot of fun to throw stats out there, right? Like, oh, I'm a multifamily syndicator who owns, 60 million in real estate across the southeast portion of the United States. It's like, it sounds like a commercial, right? It's really cool the way it sounds, but it doesn't draw people in, and it just can come across kind of like cringy. I don't know another word to say that, but avoid the stats. So how do we draw people in? Well, what I would recommend, the way you introduce yourself is you say you own a real estate investment firm. Because if we just say we're a real estate investor, that doesn't draw the other person in. It sounds like we just do it by ourselves. So I would recommend that you say, I own a real estate investment firm. And the second part of that is I typically help or I typically work with, and you already know so much about the person that you've been talking to, right? You've been asking all these questions, if they're retired, they're not retired, they're a business owner, they're a career professional. So you can say, I typically work with, business owners that have spent a lot of time building a really great business, but they're really concerned about, maintaining that lifestyle through retirement. A lot of business owners spend all their time pouring their money back into their business and are concerned about, just building long-term wealth. I want y'all to hear the words concerned, anxious, nervous, worried, upset. Those are pain words, and pain words elicit emotion from people. Emotion is what makes people buy anything. In our case, invest. There has to be an emotional reason why they want to make a change or do something different. In this case, we're just trying to pique their interest and engage them in the conversation. So I do a little mini, what I call pain commercial there. But I'd say work with, business owners, a lot of them that are, spend a lot of time building a great solid business, but their investments aren't doing as well. Most of the time, they don't have time to look at it. Unfortunately, a lot of them are nervous because they lost quite a bit of money last year in the stock market. Many of them want more stability. They don't have time to look into real estate, but they'd like to get into hard assets. And I help them create more stability and, build a financial future they feel more confident in. And we do it through private money investments, specifically buying apartment complexes all over the US. And if I introduce myself that way, I've piqued enough of their curiosity because I've hit on some pain points and challenges that they're probably dealing with. Are y'all with me? Is this hitting for y'all? I know it makes sense. I'm going to say this makes sense. Okay. Do you feel like you can do it? Does it feel natural enough in a conversation? Because it needs to feel conversational when you're introducing yourself.
Yes, it does. I'm
Okay.
going to reply for everybody.
Good. I love it. So get some good pain points. We know what our pain points are. People are tired of losing money in the stock market. They're nervous about this economy and their future. They need higher rate of return. They're tired of paying so much money to the IRS. So use some of those pain points and tweak them just a little bit based on who you're talking to. And that'll really help as you introduce yourself, give you a lot more, I'll call it stickiness, right? It sticks, it piques their curiosity. They want to have a conversation about it. The other thing I want to recommend is when you're networking, your goal is not to pitch everybody in that room about your business. My personal goal when I go to a networking event is typically I'm looking for 2 people, just 2, right? This is what I'm going to tell you, set the bar low. Set the bar low and find 2 people that you can have a meaningful conversation with. So you set up coffee or lunch with them the next week. That's my goal. Build my business on coffees and lunches. So if I meet 2 people, have an interesting conversation with them and able to follow up and set up coffee with them the following week, that means new conversations will transition or equate to capital or cash, for example, in my coaching business. I've been doing this for many years, no matter what you're selling. It's getting conversations in and building relationships with people. And it's hard to explain everything that you do and really have an in-depth conversation at a networking event. So we don't want to go to a networking event and try to have 15 to 20 conversations and collect business cards. How many of you, we'll say it this way, this is the safe way. How many of you know somebody who has a big stack of business cards in their desk and they've never really done anything with it, but they've kind of been collecting them over time? Does anybody know somebody like that? Okay. May or may not be you. I don't know. That's up to you if you want to admit to it. But my goal is that you deal with business cards once. I have one left on my desk. I had a stack of 5 cards from an event that I was at recently. And my goal is to get the cards, to text them literally as soon as I get in the car when I'm leaving an event. I am adding people into my phone. I'm getting rid of cards that I don't need. I'm connecting with people on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever social media site that your ideal investor is on. And then I am texting them to set up coffee the following week. And I mentioned that in the conversation. So I met this woman named Michelle. Michelle's a registered investment advisor, and she is the managing chair of a big women in finance organization in Dallas. And I just happened to meet her at a charity event. And I was at this charity event from having conversations and coffee with multiple people. And all of a sudden I start getting invited and into these circles with people that have quite a bit of money. And I met this woman named Michelle and had a great conversation with her. I'm like, oh man, how long have you been in this business? What do you love about it? Who's your ideal client? That's another thing that I like to ask people is, who do you help? What problems do you solve? And who's like your perfect client? Because I want to take a look at my own network. If I ever have somebody that I can send your way, I take notes on everybody that I meet. I'd love to be a referral source, but I need to understand who it is that you help. And so I had this really great conversation with her. And in return, she asked me, what do you do? Well, she and I have coffee set up for next week. That was my goal. Have a meaningful conversation, get coffee set up the following week. And from doing that, doors will open and you'll start getting into, other groups of people that are influencers in even your local area. You'll get speaking engagements from it. Things start to happen organically, but we can't just be a card collector at a networking event. So are y'all with me on that? Do you think that's a reasonable goal? Can you just focus on 2 conversations that you could set up coffee or lunch with the following week? Is that reasonable? I see some of you shaking your heads. Okay, awesome. Let me pause here. Pinky, I can go for a long time, so I don't want to keep talking how long you have for me to keep talking, and I want to pause for questions too before I go on to the next tip I'm going to share.
You're doing really good, but I like the idea of just targeting 2 people at each gathering wherever you go, and that helps you create some kind of trust and credibility too, that you're not just moving around the circles and just like a butterfly, and by the end of the day you didn't achieve anything. So if you can talk about that as well.
Yeah. And I think it also makes it easier where you actually want to go network, because it's not like, I got to go talk to all these people and collect all these business cards. I try to gamify things to make it fun. Anything that I'm not excited about doing, which a lot of people in here love networking. I've been honest with y'all and told you it's really not my favorite thing to do, but I do it. So if I can gamify it and say, okay, my goal is to find 2 people, and sometimes I find 3, for me, that's a win for the day. I hate writing too. I write really good content, but I hate writing. So I try to gamify it. I'll set a timer. Let me see if I can knock out this article in 27 minutes, right? And I play these games. So whatever you can do to make it fun for yourself, but we have to be having new conversations if we want to raise millions and millions of dollars on repeat. It's new conversations with people, and they will introduce you to other people. Referrals are, I know people hear about, oh, I should be asking for referrals, but how many of us actually do it? Referrals are your best source of new investors. And it's because they're already warm leads. They're not, they're not cold leads. There's already a level of trust there because somebody that they trust is referring you, to them to talk to them about investments. So we have to be asking not just our investors for referrals, but everybody for referrals. Let's say that you set up coffee with somebody and you meet with them and you have a great conversation, but maybe they have money they want to invest, but it's not for another 12 months until their parents' estate gets settled, right? Like they're in the middle of this whole thing financially, and they're not going to be liquid for probably 9 to 12 months. You're like, man, well, that, it's not a waste of time because you built a great relationship. Why not ask for a referral there? Why not just say like, hey, John, I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And I know now's not the perfect timing for the stuff that we do in the investment world. And, maybe it's next year as you get all this stuff settled out, but I'm curious based on, what you know about what I do and the types of people that I help, who do you know that you think I should be talking to? Just to set up coffee and have a conversation like this. I love meeting new people. Who do you know that you think I should talk to? And not, do you know anybody? Who do you know? And people, if y'all ever read the psychology, it's Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Cialdini, there's these laws of reciprocity. There's the obligation. People feel obligated. You spend a bunch of time with them. They want to do something in return. People will want to give you referrals because you've given so much to them already, even of your time. So we got to ask people for referrals that are not a good fit for what we're doing, especially, and from our investors to really build your investor community. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, so we've talked about networking, right? How to introduce ourselves, the do's and don'ts, how to draw people into a conversation, our goals in networking to get coffees and lunches set up for the following week and get people to make introductions for us, and our network will start to build and grow from there. How many of y'all remember, hopefully I'm not the only one in here, but how many of y'all remember the old school Rolodex? Y'all know what a Rolodex is? Yeah, I know Sean and Vinky know. Some of y'all youngins in here. Devin, you definitely don't know what a Rolodex is, and you're making all of us feel old. We wish we'd started investing right out of college just like you. But if y'all remember the old school Rolodex, you've heard these phrases about your network is your net worth. You will become so freaking valuable to people when you are able to introduce and connect people and become a referral source. And I'm going to give you kind of an out of the box strategy that I am currently using, because I want you to think about referral sources of people that can send you investors that may not be top of mind. So I was at the dealership, this was probably a month ago, I've worked with the same salesman because I don't like salespeople, right? Even though I've been in sales all these years, but I really like this guy because he's not salesy, and I've worked with the same guy for many years. Bought a lot of cars from him. And we were just talking about dream cars and vision boards and all these things. And I'd mentioned something about a Rolls Royce, and we were talking about cars that were $300,000 to $500,000. And we got on the topic of insurance, because when cars are that expensive, you cannot, it's not smart to use like Progressive or Geico. They're not going to insure cars at that level. You need luxury insurance agents. And he actually had a contact, and he said, yeah, let me give you this guy's card. Right? Because he knew I was like doing a vision board. I'm like, well, I might as well start acting like I'm going to have one of these one day. Let me talk to this guy. I want to learn about insurance for luxury stuff. And having a conversation with this guy, why would I want to build a relationship with him? The guy that sells insurance for art, for very expensive cars, for very expensive jewelry. Why is he somebody to build a relationship with and become valuable to him where I can send him referrals? How does that benefit me in raising capital? If you know the answer, type in the chat or unmute yourself.
Yeah, because he can send you referrals too. He might have a huge network of wealthy people.
Yeah, those are all of his clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of his clients are people that can afford very expensive cars and homes and jewelry and art, and that's who he insures. So I can become very valuable to his network by sending people that I meet and making an introduction and referring them to him. I do lots of introductions by email. To make it easy. And, especially in the last month, I've been to two charity events, one where you've got somebody bid $28,000 on a private dinner at their home for 10 people with a chef. It didn't cost $28,000, y'all, but they're raising their paddle at an auction, paying $28,000. I'm like, there's money in this room. I got in that room from having coffees and networking and meeting people. And now as you start building that Rolodex, I can dive into my Rolodex of people that I know that have a lot of money and ask them, who do they use for insurance? I really think you should meet this guy. And I start sending him referrals. I'm top of mind for him. I become very valuable, and he will make introductions for me as well because he knows what it is that I do. So I want y'all to be thinking out of the box when it comes to referral sources and referral partners and your network of the people that you know. Because your network should be a lot bigger than your actual community of investors. You're gonna know a lot more people than just your community of investors. And I'm not counting all the people like all of us, right? We're peer-to-peer, kind of partners, colleagues. This is a great network, but I want y'all to build your network outside of the real estate space where you're the only real estate expert in the room. Okay, let me pause for a second. I do this in all my trainings. We're gonna go on to the next topic, but I want y'all to give me at least one takeaway. Because it's a waste of your time for you to be here if we can't at least figure out what's one thing we can apply in our business. Y'all ever been to a conference before where you take a lot of notes and you kind of passively learn, but we don't take action in it? I don't want y'all to waste your time here. So tell me, what's one thing that you took away from this? An aha moment, an action item, something you're going to do in your business, implement, one thing you're going to do differently from what we've talked about with networking.
I got a lot of it, but I'm going to give chance to others to talk first. If you're wanting to unmute yourself and answer, please go ahead and do that.
Oh, her quiet crowd.
I know.
Hi, Keely. I'm sorry. I'm driving, so it was hard to unmute.
Oh, hey, Bethany.
That's okay, Bethany.
So it was funny that you mentioned that about the luxury insurance, because I just had pulled a list of all the insurance agents I know, and it never occurred to me like I should specify luxury type, what they're actually insuring. And I was, oh my word, that's like a game changer. That's a huge epiphany for me. So I'm definitely going through and scrubbing that list and going back to the ones I have more intentionality with.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, wait to hear how that goes when you implement it. Just meeting people, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else?
If nobody's going to answer, I'm going to add to it some takeaways. First of all, when you're going to a conference or any networking session, target a couple people or maybe 2, 3 maximum that you have meaningful conversations and have a lunch or coffee date, whatever set up. That's very important. And then once you meet them at the coffee or lunch, asking for referrals, who else they know or how you can tap into their network. I think that's very, very important to me. I do that all the time because the best thing you can do is to grow your network is tapping in others' network, because you do not know how many people they have in their network. It could be thousands, and boom, you hit a jackpot right there. And I say all the time, like, I'm in the relationship building business, and that's what Keely's talking about. And that's what I love about it, Keely. That's my takeaways.
You're so good at it, Vinky. You're so good at it. In the chat, Rashab said, focus on quality of connections, not quantity. Yes, love it. Isha said, what suggestions do you have for a newbie to get people to JV with you and where to start? I haven't done personally a lot of JV deals outside of just my own friends and family. I've done mostly syndications. So I don't know if I'm the best one to give you advice there, but what I'll tell you is that building relationships with people is finding a way to add value to their network. You become very valuable to people when you can do something for them. It's coming from a place of servant leadership. So it's meeting people, it's expressing what it is that you do. And so they know when they meet you, okay, Isha is a woman who acquires, XYZ assets in these markets, and here's exactly who she's looking to meet. I think sometimes we maybe make assumptions that people know what it is that we do. Like if I were to go to a networking event for sales coaching and I just say I'm a sales coach, well, that doesn't really tell people how they can work with me and who I'm trying to meet and who's my ideal client. So I think we have to be more forward about that and how we describe what it is that we do and the people that we're wanting to add to our network. Vinky, do you have anything to add to that for JVs?
Not necessarily. I haven't done anything, but I would go with my family and friends too, the people that I know.
Yes. Love that. Okay. All right. So are y'all ready for the next topic, the next tip I'm going to give you? I don't want to overwhelm you. So I'm trying to give you stuff that you can implement right away. That's, easy to learn. The next thing that I want to teach you is the first step in my sales process. I've been using this since 2011. I've been teaching it since 2013 to thousands of salespeople around the world, different industries. And this strategy, it's called disarm. It's the very first step in my sales process, and it's called disarm, DISARM. And the whole goal of it is to get people's walls down from the very beginning in the conversation. What is somebody's biggest fear when talking to a salesperson? What are they afraid of? Type it in the chat or unmute yourself and tell me, what are people's biggest fear in talking to a salesperson? What are they worried about?
Get sucked into buying something they'll regret later.
Getting sucked into buying something they'll regret later, or being sold, right? Having to deal with all of the people love to buy stuff. I would say they hate to be sold. So they're afraid that they're going to get on a call with you and you're just going to pitch and push your deal. It's oftentimes why, people have all these free offers out there, like free consultation, book a call with me, and nobody schedules a call because book a call is very salesy language. And there's no step in there that's disarming them. So they know when they actually get on a call with you that you're not going to be pushing them into your deal or selling them on your deal. People will avoid things that are actually good for them, that they actually need help with. Your investments could be a great solution because they don't want to be sold in the process. So we have to disarm people from the very beginning of the conversation. And what I mean by that is giving people permission to tell you no. And what I want to deal with first is, because whenever I took this sales strategy, I did it for myself, broke records in a sales role. Corporate asked me, can you come on board and teach what you've done? This is amazing. So I started teaching it to the entire international organization with hundreds and hundreds of salespeople. And they were terrified. They said, well, Keely, if I tell people they can say no, what if they say no? Like, well, it doesn't work like that. Just because you give people know they have permission to say no. The whole goal in telling them that they can say no is that their walls come down and you can actually have a productive conversation about what's not working in their existing investments and why they should take a look at the asset class that you are raising capital for. But they're never going to do that. Their walls are going to be up the entire time. They're going to be short in how they respond to you. They're going to hold their cards close to their vest and not give you the information that you really need to know because they're terrified at some point you're going to start selling them. So the way that I disarm people, there's two sides of disarming. It's telling them that they can say no, but it's also saying that from your perspective, it may not be the right fit. So let me give you an example of what that sounds like. So let's say that Vinky and I are on an investor call and, we've had a little bit of chit chat in the beginning. I've been looking forward to connecting with you. And usually the way I transition into it is I'll say, are you okay if I tell you how these calls typically go, just so you know what to expect? They love that because people are terrified when they get on a call with you. They have no idea what's supposed to happen or, if you're going to start pitching them on something. They always say, yes, yeah, that sounds great. Awesome. Well, I was hoping we could talk about just your existing investments, maybe what you like, what you don't like, what's not working. And I'll share with you, of course, what we do in our space, get your questions answered. At some point in the conversation, though, you might decide for whatever reason that this just isn't the right fit. Maybe it's not what you're looking for. Maybe I'm not the right person to help you. If you get to that point, are you gonna be okay telling me that? And they always say, well, yeah, of course I'll tell you that. And I usually double check and I'll say, are you sure you seem like a nice woman? Yeah, I'll tell you that. Right. So I'm giving them permission up front to tell me if it's not a good fit. Are you going to be okay letting me know that? They say yes. I say the flip side of that is maybe after I understand, your goals and what you're looking for and maybe what you want in an investment strategy, maybe I decide it's not the right fit from my perspective and what we look for investors and, a fit for our investor community. And maybe I'm just not the right person to help you. Are you going to be okay if I tell you that? They always say yes. And you build so much trust right here because they realize immediately you're not going to try to push them into something because they have to be a good fit for your investor community. And the third outcome is, we have a great conversation and maybe you decide that you really like this stuff and you want to have more conversations about it and maybe even look at investing in a deal in the future. And if we get to that point, we'll have a conversation about it and we'll figure out what those next steps are together. Are you okay with that? Are you comfortable with that? That's the disarm step. It's giving them permission to say no. It's me telling them that I may let them know it's not the right fit from my perspective. And are they okay with that? And the third outcome is maybe it is, and we can talk about what those next steps would look like. Are you comfortable with that? And doing the disarm step in any sales conversation gets their walls down immediately, where all of a sudden now we can have a productive conversation about why they reached out in the first place, what is not working in their existing investment strategy that would make them be interested or want to look at multifamily, self-storage, senior assisted living, build to rent, whatever it is that you're raising capital for. If that disarm step doesn't happen, people's walls are up the entire time because they're waiting for what they perceive the impending close when you're going to start selling them on why your investments are so amazing. Because if you think about typical salespeople, they've been, their sales training has been be super friendly and energetic, be really outgoing and be willing to talk to as many people as possible, know your product really well, be super helpful and answer all their questions. And that's how you do well in sales. And I would tell you that is so far from the truth and a long path to success. And you'll probably quit before you ever get there because people are not open to it. They get triggered when we start product vomiting. I call it product vomit. We start product vomiting on people on a Zoom call and they got on the call and we build some fake rapport, find some things in common. And then we jump into, let me tell you about this build to rent project and why it's so amazing. And we start product vomiting on them. And they're triggered because that's what typical salespeople do. So we have to start with the disarm step. If we want to get people to trust us, we want to raise millions, we have to start with disarming them. And we've got to figure out what's not working in their existing investment strategy first, before we ever talk about what a potential solution is. Okay, let me pause here for a second, Vicki, because I keep going for a long time. Does anybody have any questions on that? Do y'all understand what I mean by the disarm step? Can you see yourself using it or see that it would be helpful? Let me know in the chat or unmute yourself.
I think whatever you said about disarm, that's the very key point. Because that way, some of the investors, when you're sharing something with them, you're not waiting to hear back for a long time too. Otherwise, you're just trying to give them a nudge here, there. Hey, what's going on? Are you going to get back to me? You don't have to worry about that because they're going to be so transparent and open. Okay, this works for me or does not work for me day one. And you can move on to the next one. I love it. Thanks for sharing
I
that.
love that. Yes, of course. Absolutely. And anybody else, if y'all have questions on anything, even outside of what I'm talking about with raising capital, type it in the chat and I'm happy to talk about it. Okay. And I'll keep an eye on the chat if y'all have questions in there. The last thing I want to have you think about, I was going to say teach you, but I just want you to think about this. What makes people buy anything is not the product itself. It's not the investment itself. It's not what makes people, write a check for $200,000 is not because the investment is so amazing. That is the logical reason of why they justify the decision they made. But what makes them actually say yes and be willing to go through the process, the uncomfortableness of changing their investment strategy, investing with somebody that they perceive as a stranger they just met, not too long ago, is a pain point. And you're exactly right, Rashab. It's emotions. People buy on an emotional basis. The top 3 reasons that people buy anything, doesn't matter if it's a mattress, insurance, life insurance policy, is pain they're experiencing in the present is number 1. That is the strongest. Pain they're experiencing right now in the present. They've lost money in their, in their stock account last year. And now piled on top of that, their parents, maybe their mom's not doing well and she has to go into full-time, assisted living care and her mom doesn't have money for that. So now the investor's having to come out of pocket to take care of their mother and they just lost, $300,000 in their retirement account last year. That is pain in the present and there is urgency to do something different because something hurts right now. That will cause somebody to change their investment strategy and spend the time looking into commercial real estate. The second motivating reason for somebody to buy anything is fear of pain in the future. If I don't do something now, I'm not going to be on track for retirement. If I don't do something now, I can't send my, 10-year-old and 12-year-old kid to college. If I don't do something now, I'm not going to be able to maintain my lifestyle in retirement. If I don't do something now, I'm going to have to work till I'm 76. I can't retire on time. That's the second motivating reason. The third is the greed factor. It's the exact opposite of pain. It's pleasure. And the problem is most salespeople, and I'd say a lot of syndicators out there, focus on the greed factor. Look at how amazing these returns are. Look at all the tax advantages. And you feel like you do a really good job pitching it. And you're like, why is there no urgency? Why are they not excited or wanting to do this? And you get investors that say, yeah, this sounds great. Let me know when you have your next deal coming up. And then you don't hear from them for weeks or months on end. And you have a deal and you call them and they don't answer. And you're like, I thought they were excited about it. And it's because we sold based on greed. We sold based on, look at how much better the returns are over here. Look at the tax advantages. Look at the diversification. And we didn't spend any time figuring out, do they have pain in the present or fear of pain in the future? And the problem when you sell on greed alone is that there's zero urgency to be greedy. I can be greedy now. I could be greedy 6 months from now. Y'all see the problem there? There's no urgency when we sell just based on greed. So if we want to raise capital, we've got to dig in and figure out, what are the pain points that our investors are experiencing? What is not working in their existing investment strategy? Why? They're super busy, right? So we could say, Vlad, you're a super busy guy. I'm curious, what's going on in your investments that made you want to make time for this meeting or talk about, commercial real estate investing? And let's dig in and figure out what isn't working with his existing strategy. What happens if nothing changes? All these questions that we need to ask, because pain is what motivates people to say yes. When we are writing emails and we're writing content, we have to be focused on the problem. If you want people to care about what it is that you're talking about and you want to anchor their awareness, you have to talk about the problem first. If y'all were to go to the movies and you saw this, maybe it's a brand new movie that came out, and this guy was born into a wealthy family, and he went to Harvard and he graduated top of his class. And then he went and got a big job in Wall Street at a hedge fund. And he, starting salary, he made $500,000 a year. And then he kept climbing the career ladder. He became the managing partner. Then he met the love of his life. They had a honeymoon in Fiji. Then they had 4 kids, and all their kids were healthy, and their kids grew up to be, the most amazing, accomplished children in the world. And then the movie ended. You wouldn't enjoy the movie. What's missing? What's missing in this movie that I just made up? What's missing in this movie? Why would this movie not get good ratings?
There's no real life in it.
There's no problems.
No pain.
There's no problems. People don't care until there's a problem. They don't care. They don't focus on something unless there's a problem. So you're exactly right. And our brain, we're so inundated with information that our brain has a filter. Is this going to help me survive, or is this going to help me thrive? And if it's not going to do either of those, it's white noise and I tune it out. So if we want to get people to focus in, we have to talk about why other investors are reaching out. What happens if somebody who's 50 years old doesn't change their investment strategy based on historical returns in the stock market? Where are they going to be at 10 years from now versus where they could be in real estate? We have to talk about the problem first to anchor their awareness. No pain, no capital. If you can remember that. I've been teaching that rule for years in sales. It's always no pain, no sale, but no pain, no capital. There's no emotional reason of why they want to do this. There's not going to be any urgency for them to wire funds whenever you have your deal come up. Okay, let me pause here. What are your takeaways from that? We've talked about how to network. I talked about how to disarm people to get their walls down so they're actually comfortable to have a conversation with you and never worry about being sold. And then we talked about the third one is pain, and how people actually make decisions to buy anything, or in our case, to invest in our deals. What are y'all's takeaways from that? What is an aha moment, something you're going to implement, change about your process, something you learned, or questions you have? Any of that works. Type it in the chat or unmute yourself. Let me know.
While you're waiting somebody to chime in, let me ask you this question. Since you're talking about the fears and pains, in today's market condition, the way the market is, so much uncertainty, people are scared, a lot of fear and emotion going on, people are sitting on the sidelines. So how you're tackling these fear or pain in the market, or the investors, or what your strategy is to the investors to buy in or invest or use this time? It might be beneficial for them.
Yeah, investors so it's no secret that right now raising capital takes more work. It takes more education of your investors. It takes more one-on-one conversations because of everything that's happening and going on right now. You need to become the news source for them. You don't want them just sitting there at home watching CNBC or reading the Wall Street Journal and not getting a perspective of private money investments and why they can't just sit in cash. And that's a big thing that I would play on right now, is sitting in cash and what real inflation is. Not what they're telling us what it is, but what real inflation is, and how that's going to impact them if they don't make a decision to move. So how is your team adjusting your acquisition strategy in this market? What are 3 things they should be looking for in any investment opportunity in this market? So it's educating them on how to make the best investment decisions in a market like this, and using phrases like, most investors have realized with inflation as high as it is, that sitting in cash is not an option. So how do we adjust our investing strategy in an economy like this? Here's 3 things you should be looking for in the next deal that you evaluate. Maybe it's, long-term fixed rate debt, right, is one of them, or something about how you're evaluating cap rates. But you can start educating them on how to make the best investment decisions, even in an economy like this.
Thank you.
Yes, you bet.
Anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and chime in. So quiet, everybody.
No, y'all are like the most quiet group I've ever talked to.
Rishabh has a question. Go ahead, Rishabh.
Yeah, I do have a question here, Winky. Thank you. Keely, specifically talking about, the current market situation. When you're talking to investors, what have you improvised? Because this is not, 2021 anymore. There are only so many deals on hand, which makes sense to investors. So have you seen, investors who were pretty avid about investing in multifamily, going somewhere else or some other asset classes because of the deal flow and, where we are in the overall market?
You definitely will see that. You'll see investors looking at, other asset classes because of where things are at with multifamily. But I also think that it's really important that if that is the asset class that you're focused on, that you're explaining to them why it's so important to wait, right? Good things are worth waiting for, because as this market continues to progress, there's going to be some really amazing buying opportunities in third and fourth quarter. And I think educating your investors where they understand that, they're willing to set aside capital, they're willing to wait because you're their source of information. With that being said, yes, they are looking at other asset classes as well. I actually send quite a few referrals. My father and I are focused primarily in the agriculture space now. We're out of multifamily. And not because of the multifamily market, but because we had a huge opportunity to build vineyards. And so I get investors that are, that still want to be in multifamily. So I think for me to best serve my investor community, I have to have people that I can refer them to that are great multifamily operators. And if they want to invest in build to rent, I'm going to send them over here to this guy. And if they want to invest in self-storage, here's the person I'm going to refer them to and make introductions. So I think for us to best serve our investor community, you may not have to do all those asset classes yourself. Maybe you're a specialist, but have people that you trust, that you're willing to have referral relationships with them as well. There's plenty of money to go around, right? There's plenty of money. And I know the more that I serve my network and send them investor referrals, they're going to do the same thing for me.
All right, good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Appreciate it.
Of course. Great question.
Any more questions, please unmute yourself and ask. I think it was a lot of information, Keely, that you have shared. So everybody's still trying to strategize in their mind, how much strategy I should create for myself going forward. That was pretty awesome.
I'm so glad. If I can simplify it for you, like if you're looking at this big mountain that you got to climb to raise capital, it does take time. It's consistent, persistent action. If you can focus on building your network and getting really good at knowing people and becoming a valuable source of doing things for others, people will introduce you as a result, and you'll build a network that raises capital. If you can just focus on that. There's a lot of talk in the industry that spends a lot of time focusing on automations and funnels, and all that stuff is important. And I teach that and I give that to my clients. But what I'll tell them is that I don't want them sitting behind the computer writing 52 blog posts. That's not going to raise capital. It's like you remember the Field of Dreams movie? If you build it, they will come. In this business, they will not. You can build the most amazing website and blogs and like this beautiful funnel, and nobody knows it exists. Because you have to talk to people. So those are questions I ask myself. If I'm sitting behind my computer too much, writing content, I'm like, I got to get out there and meet people. I got to talk to people. I got to pick up the phone, get referrals, get introductions, and try to have at least 2 to 3 coffees on my calendar every single week of new people that I'm meeting. And it's conversations equal capital. I have a client who's raised 17 million. He doesn't even have a website. I don't recommend that, right? I think his life would be a lot easier if he had funnels. He's like, I don't have time for that. I just got to talk to people. And he loves to network. So he's done really well. But I tell you that story as an example that you can raise a lot of capital and deal with the automations and the funnels as you build your business. But it's talking to people is where the money comes from.
I think you said it very well. But the thing is, we are in the digital age. So everybody thinks they can do everything online. You need to have a website. You need to be on the social media. And you just spend so much time on the social media all the time. What is missing is the human touch. And
Yeah.
every human being is looking for a human touch and that experience. What buy people in is the experience. They're looking for certain kind of experience. And when that resonate with them, they're gonna jump on it. So
Yes.
I think whatever you shared, Keely, today, that was very, very, I think, I don't know, very close to my heart. I loved it, every word of it. And I love all your tips and tricks that you shared with us today. And I'm gonna ask again, if anybody has a question, this is your time to ask Keely. She is so special and she has nailed it, everything in the capital raising. So please go ahead and ask, unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Y'all are so kind.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate that. You know, I want y'all to realize that if you've never done this before, anybody can learn this. Like, great salespeople are not born. No matter what people say or what they think, people don't come out of the womb being a stellar salesperson. You know, in the beginning of my career, there were a lot of things that I screwed up, which is why I hired a sales coach. And that got me to the next level. So what I want y'all to realize is, even if you're an introvert, you don't have to be this outgoing, loud, boisterous personality to be really great in raising capital. Anybody can learn this skill set, just like anybody can learn how to underwrite. It's just a matter of dedicating yourself and realizing that you're going to have to talk to people. And maybe you're better with people one-on-one versus, you know, rooms full of hundreds of people. There's going to be some times where you're going to have to be uncomfortable and do things that are, you know, they're out of your wheelhouse. But you'll grow from that. It becomes easier the more and more that you do it. But anybody that's in here can absolutely do this. If you see yourself raising, you know, 30 million a year, you can do it. There's no reason why you can't. It's just learning the strategies, learning people, meeting people, networking, consistent, persistent action. There's no one thing or one secret in this business of raising capital. There's not one thing that anybody's going to teach you that all of a sudden you raise 20 million next year. And it can be hard if your entire news feed on LinkedIn and Facebook is full of our peers, right? Other people just like us that are like, oh, I just closed on 1,200 units and, oh, I just raised $30 million. And you see all this stuff and you're like, man, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not doing that? What am I missing? And what nobody wants to talk about, and I'm very upfront about this, every client that I work with, I'm like, they're like, I really want to do this. You know, I want you to teach me how to raise cap. And I'm like, well, we're not there yet. Let me tell you all the disclaimers. And if you still want to do it after I tell you all this, then you're really dedicated, because nobody wants to talk about the hard stuff. I tell every person it's going to be harder than you think it's going to be. It's going to take you longer than you think it's going to take to build an investor community. But if you're dedicated to the process and you're willing to show up consistently and persistently, you can raise millions. So I want y'all to know the truth about this industry, that there's no golden nugget or holy grail to raise capital. It is learning people. It is building your network. It is building relationships. It is getting back up every time you fall down. There's going to be a lot of times that you're going to hear the word no. That's what sales is. And it's persistency that will get you there. But anybody in here can do it. Kelly said, don't fear the numbers. Yes.
That's true. Yeah, I love it. Oh my God. That was super awesome session. Anybody has any more questions? I'm checking.
Yes, I do have a question.
Go ahead, please.
I would like to ask, speaking to an introvert, you gave some formulas, some steps that one could use, if you will. And I think that sort of helps one to overcome self, if you will, me, and speaking to people and getting people to respond to you and what you're trying to do and to accomplish. So I think what I'm trying to ask here is, do you have a website that we could follow up and sort of get that formula, some of the formulas that you used as you approach customers or new people, or getting them to go into business with you, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Ken. I actually have this article that I publish weekly. It's called Capital Raising Chronicles. It's specific to this industry. And I've got some other stuff that's more generic in the sales world for business owners. But for this industry specifically, I publish it every week, and it's called Capital Raising Chronicles. And it's on my website. It's just my first and last name, KeelyHubbard.com. And there's at the top, you can tap on capital raising and you'll see where you can subscribe to it. But I send out a lot of great stuff that we're talking about today. I send it out weekly. So that'd be a great place to start.
That's true. So while you're at it, Keely, please share your other information, how people can contact you beside the website.
Yeah, I mean, I would say find me on any social media platform. I'd love to hear from you. You'll probably, if you message me, you'll probably get a voice, a voice message back because I love that feature in it. But I'd love to meet you. I love meeting everybody in this real estate space, and however I can help, just let me know. I'm doing a masterclass in June, probably in the next month or so, on raising capital. So I run it twice a year. It's a free masterclass. So if you're plugged into Capital Raising Chronicles and that newsletter, you'll get notified of it. But yeah, just find me on any social media platform, and I'd love to connect with you. And Vinky, I'm so appreciative that you trust me enough to bring me on and introduce me to your community. So thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. I loved it. Thanks for coming. And it was a great session. We are at the top of the hour. There's no more questions. So I'm just going to call it a day. We'll see you again, everybody, next week. Same time, same channel. And thanks again, Keely. Really appreciate you being here today with us.
Thank you. Bye, y'all. Great
Bye,
meeting you.
everybody.